Here is the beginning of my presentation. As David told you, there's not necessarily a cheery subject, but one that is becoming increasingly more important as more and more of our life becomes digital. Couldn't have said it better myself. Here's a quote from John Lennon, and it certainly, as you look back over your life, has certainly proved true for me, and I'm pretty sure it has for you as well, which is why we need to do estate planning. We've been hearing about that for a long time. I'm sure that most of us, if not all of us, have put together a will. Traditionally, we've focused on the disposition of our physical and tangible assets at our death. Create a will, designate an executor, begin to try to get information together for that executor about what he can, so he can have it at his disposal when he needs it. We've also hopefully planned for the possibility that we might become incapacitated, unable to act on our own behalf in either financial matters or in healthcare matters. So they've come up with powers of attorney forms to appoint an agent to act for you for property and for healthcare. This is a pretty standard estate planning portfolio. Essential to all of this is sharing of the necessary information, of course, so that your agents or your executor knows what to do and where to find it and all the information that might be important. Well, where does digital afterlife planning fit into all of this? The standard definition is deciding what should happen to your digital legacy when you die. And I'll talk a little bit more about what your digital legacy is. And deciding if and how you wish to live on after your death. There are services out there that will offer to create, if you will, a digital avatar for you that allows you to extend birthday greetings, best wishes, communicate posts to your websites or to your social websites, and so on after you die. And I suspect this will only become more elaborate as artificial intelligence becomes more and more developed. It includes selecting and authorizing someone to implement and supervise your digital wishes. And these folks are referred to in the literature as your digital executor to distinguish the person from your traditional executor. You would also potentially create a digital agent to supervise your digital wishes should you become incapacitated. Once again, we need to create and share documentation required to communicate your desires to all affected parties. And this is in effect your digital will or some document like that that would be shared with your family, with close friends, with perhaps business associates, designating one or two individuals to act as your digital agent or digital executor. I'll talk some more about legal issues a little bit further in this presentation, but one of the question marks associated with this is what legal standing this kind of document would have and what legal authority these individuals would have to act on your behalf should they be challenged in some way. Once again, we'll need to provide the information your agent and executor will need and location access information. And as I said below, you must incorporate the possibility of disability as well as death. Well, what's your digital legacy? You might first think of your digital accounts. If you're like me, you probably have 100 or more digital accounts. You go through them and look at them and you just shake your head. Not long ago, actually for Christmas last year, my son asked me to buy him a silicone muffin pan. He likes to bake. Well, he told me all the details of the pan, and I looked for it around the internet, and I finally found it at a bakery supply company in Brooklyn, New York. Ordered it for him, but before I could order it, I had to set up an account with them with a username and a password. I will probably never use that account again, but it's just one of my many accounts. Digital legacy includes all aspects of your digital life that exist at your death. And if you think about it, you have photos, videos, art, music, opinions, correspondence, inner thoughts, all sorts of things of a digital nature that you've filed, you've stored, you've created, you've downloaded, you've stored on your computer, you've stored in the cloud. It's all part of your digital legacy. What's going to happen to this? What do you want to have happen to it? Consider your potential customers. If you're thinking about, okay, what do I want to leave up, for example, on the digital screens, on the web, available on my computer, available to my family after I die, they become your customers. Who are you doing this for? Why are you doing it? And how much interest will they have in your digital life? What might they want access to? And how do you feel about that? Let me give you an example. In the literature, I ran across a court case back from 2004. A Marine had died in Iraq, and his family wanted to have access to his emails. They contacted Yahoo, which was his email provider, and asked to have access to his emails. Yahoo had a policy at the time, and I believe still do, that when you die, your account dies with you. And therefore, they refused access to the emails for the family. Family went to court, won a court decision forcing Yahoo to release his emails to them. Well, no one knows how that Marine would have felt about having all his emails available to his family. Ones he had already sent to family members were now resident on their computers. They could look at them and reread them anytime they wanted to, but ones he had sent to other people were not. And would he really want all of those other emails available to his family members? We'll never know the answer to that, but that's something for you to consider as you do your own digital afterlife planning. A long time ago, I had a three-dimension tic-tac-toe puzzle. It was a lot of fun, but I can't help thinking of it when I think of a rather complicated real-life puzzle. And why do I use the analogy? Well, here's why. Your digital stuff keeps changing. You're getting new hardware, new software, technology, new apps. You have an ever-growing collection of files, photos, music. We have no idea what additional things will become available in the digital world down the road, but one thing we can be sure of, it's going to keep changing. Secondly, the providers and websites we work with keep changing their end-user license agreements, terms of service, and processes. Government is starting to get involved. Laws are changing. We don't have a lot of federal laws in this area right now, but state laws are beginning to be created. Court decisions can come along and affect what we do and how we do it. And people in your life may change. People that you're very close to now, you may become estranged from. People may move away, become incapacitated, or die. Decisions you make about your digital executor, digital agent may need to be revisited, and you may change your feelings about what you wish to share and with whom. All things to keep in mind as we move ahead. Before we go much farther, I ran across this. I took this photo the other day because I was somewhat startled to see this device in a building where I visited. But if you're old enough to recognize what it is, you probably have already accumulated a lot of physical and analog versions of the things I mentioned before: correspondence, music, videos, pictures, etc. That is basically the same thing as some of the digital stuff that we're talking about in nature and purpose. And so, although this talk is designed toward the digital side of your life, there are probably going to be quite a few situations where a common approach can apply to all of this stuff. So I encourage, as you go through your own digital afterlife planning, that you stop and take a look at your physical, your analog life as well, and say, okay, how does this all fit together? And if I do one thing for this, does it make sense to do the same thing for that, and instead of doing them separately? So how do we start? Well, let's start with the obvious. A look at your digital accounts. How many do you have? How many of those do you really need or use? What will happen to them if you die or become incapacitated? And what do you want to happen to them? So you'll have to do some homework to answer that third question, because you'll have to look at processes and policies of the various websites where those digital accounts are held. So what can go wrong if you do nothing, in terms of, well, if I do nothing, these things will happen, but I want those things to happen. And so what do you need to do now to make sure that those things happen? Examples of digital accounts. Here's, you're certainly familiar with all of these, but just put them on as a thought starter so you don't overlook any. If you've gone paperless on your utility bills and bill payments, if you've gone paperless on investment accounts, bank accounts, etc., now you've got accounts there too, even though you perhaps in the past had done business with them with snail mail. And travel, vacation, entertainment, all of those, and social. And you know all the social networking sites. I have this a snapshot I took a year ago for a similar presentation, just to remind everybody about how many are out there. And of course, there's dozens and dozens and dozens more than this, but these are some of the most popular ones. And they have different afterlife policies. These, what I list here, is what I've pulled out of various articles, website articles that I picked up, and websites I've gone to. So the descriptions I show here may not be exactly accurate right now today, because things keep changing, and I don't know how old this information is, but they're different. So you're not going to find the same kind of policies or procedures. Each space is probably going to be somewhat unique. And from my limited examination of some of these, most of these policies deal with your death, not necessarily incapacity. So that's another thing to keep in mind. So here's an example. I mentioned on a previous slide that I'd do an example of Google. This is what Google has right now, and this is real world. This is from the Google website as of a couple of days ago. If you want to designate an inactive account manager, you can do so. Go into my account at google.com, log on, and go to the personal info and privacy screen in the center of this page. Go down to the bottom of go down to the first paragraph with the 5 blue lines in it, and look for your control your content, okay? And click that, and here comes a second screen in which you have an option down here to assign an account trustee. So click on that setting, and it will take you to yet another screen, the inactive account manager. And this is where you begin your plan for your Google account if you pass away or stop using Google. And I'm not sure if it's large enough type for you to read it, so I'll just take a moment. Take control of what happens to your Google account if you're unexpectedly unable to use your account, such as in the event of an accident, or death. Decide when Google should consider your account to be inactive and what we Google, do with your data afterwards. You can share it with someone you trust or ask Google to delete it. And click on the start and it will take you through a series of questions and so forth. I'm not going to do all of that here, but I do have a graphic that I picked up from a previous presentation. And here it is. The inactive account manager, it starts out with a timeout period. You set a timeout period after which your account can be treated as inactive. You can set up alerts so that you would be alerted or someone else could be alerted before the timeout period ends, just to alert you so that it does not inadvertently go inactive. You can provide contacts, add trusted contacts who should be made aware that you are no longer using your account. You can also share data with them if you like, so that if perhaps you're living by yourself, you're perhaps have family scattered around the country, and for whatever reasons, perhaps illness, ill health, whatever, you stop using your Google account. If you've set up those family members as contacts, they would be notified by Google that maybe something's wrong, that they should check because nobody's used your account for a while. And you can optionally delete the account or designate an inactive account manager who would manage your account for you and delete it or take whatever action you wish on your behalf. So that's an example for Google. That's just one of dozens or even hundreds, depending on how many accounts you have. So let's continue on with digital accounts. We've named hundreds of digital accounts. Where do we start? I suggest that we start with social media accounts because a lot of you is exposed to others, and then work your way through all your other accounts. This is an opportunity to delete unnecessary accounts, to take a hard look at why you have all these. Can you close them now to save a lot of time later? And oh, by the way, save a lot of follow-up later to make sure that you're current with whatever current policies are provided on the website. Once again, I encourage you to include your physical accounts in parallel. Is there a benefit to digitizing them, perhaps, so you're handling them all in the same fashion, or eliminating them? I recommend creating a log of all your accounts. I'm kind of old school, so I think in terms of a sheet of paper that you could put with a format on it, standard format, in which you provide name of the account, description, how you access it, passwords, all the relevant information for the account, what the policies are, what you've set up as your digital legacy on that account, and put 3 holes in it, put in a 3-wing binder. Now, of course, in the digital world, you would do the same thing in a file folder on your computer or in your cloud account. But the same idea, that you would create a standard document for each of your accounts that would be available then to your digital agent or executor, making life a lot simpler for him or her. And speaking of whom, I would heartily recommend that you name that person now or identify that person now and ask him or her to work with you as you go through this process, in part so that you can get their feedback, their questions, their concerns, and build it into this template or format that you put together, and be sure to include the information that they're looking for and will need as you analyze each of your accounts. Okay, so now you're well on your way to organizing accounts, right? So let's go back and say to the 4th slide, digital legacy. And on digital legacy, just to refresh your memory, we talked about photos, videos, art, music, opinions, correspondence, inner thoughts, blogs, you name it. Anything else of a digital nature that you've accumulated or created. Well, for each of those, perhaps using the same format that you use to analyze your accounts, or with a separate one if you feel that that is more appropriate. Collect detailed information about each of those categories, each of those areas in your life. Once again, purge unnecessary stuff and then organize the remainder to make it simpler for you and for your digital executor or agent. Decide what you want to have done with what's left. Donate it to charity if we're talking about perhaps music or videos or whatever. Don't make it available to other family members. Just delete it if it's digital, discard it if it's old vinyl LPs, because once again, I would encourage you to look at both physical and digital assets together. So, so if you have a collection of vinyl LPs, you have cassette tapes, you have CDs, and you have downloaded music on your computer, you've got a mix of analog and digital assets, and you may want to do different things with them. You may want to do the same thing with them, but you probably should consider them together. Document your decisions in enough detail to make your intentions clear, and also not only for your digital agent or executive, but if family members or someone else were to challenge the disposition of those items, it would be helpful, I think, for him or her to have a document. Right here is what he said, and this is what we're going to do. Once again, provide passwords and other related access information. And while I'm on that subject, let me just mention or remind everyone that passwords these days aren't enough. More and more two-factor authentication is being used. In a number of cases, you're being asked for security questions. If there's some question about the password or the account. So your digital executor or agent needs all of those things. And if the second factor authentication includes things like text messages to your cell phone, well, guess what? He also needs access to your cell phone and the method of unlocking your cell phone. Or you need to consider changing or adding to your two-factor authentication process, perhaps through email or something like that. Okay, once again, as I said, I include both physical and digital assets in this review. So the intent here is maybe every week you work on another account. Every week or every 2 weeks you work on something else, your music, your videos, or whatever. And over an extended period of time, you would build this dossier, online or physical or both, that is available to your digital agent and executor and your family and close friends.
Bill, David here.
No.
You're fading in and out, so stay close to your mic, please.
Well, it's a headset mic, so I'm not quite sure what the problem is, but okay, I'll speak a little louder.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, moving on. Where can I turn for digital afterlife help? We have reference books, training courses, YouTube videos, all the usual suspects, magazine, news, and web articles, presentations like this one or local ones if your library perhaps has various presentations about digital subjects, dedicated websites, knowledgeable professionals, attorney, and afterlife specialists. Speaking of which, as you talk with your attorney, you probably need to find out how experienced and knowledgeable he is about digital matters. The same person who did your will 10 years ago and your powers of attorney may or may not be up to speed with digital questions. So if he's not or she's not, I encourage you to encourage them to do so. So we'll go through these in some examples. Here is a book that I bought a while back. It's by Evan Carroll, Your Digital Afterlife. This is a snip from the Amazon website. The book was published in 2011. It's no longer in print. You can buy a used version of it in paperback from Amazon, or you can also download the Kindle edition. I recommend this strongly. It's about 200 pages. It was one of the first books, I think, that was written by about digital afterlife. Here is a table of contents, covers a wide variety of things. As I said, it's about 200 pages. Talks about devices, talks about the law, immortal issues, posthumous messaging, online memorials. Pretty much it covers the waterfront. Here's another one. It's called Take Control of Your Digital Legacy. This is also a snip from the Amazon website. I also own this book. It was recently published in 2017. It's one of a series of Take Control books. I want to take a moment to thank Gabe Goldberg for putting me onto these. I had never heard of them until I was in an email correspondence with Gabe back in February. And I found their website. It was originally founded as a provider of ebooks for Apple products, computers, phones, tablets, and so on, but they've expanded their repertoire and they now have a number of books on other subjects, and this was a recent example. This book is well written, it's current, it's up to date. It includes, among other things, a digital will template that you could use to just follow through as a way of putting together a digital will. Here's the table of contents for this book. He spends, there are some parallels here between the previous book from Evan and this book, but there are also some additional areas. He talks quite a bit here about choosing archival media, creating a data archive, presuming that you wish to save a lot of your digital material for posterity, for your kids, for your grandkids, whatever. Something to consider because, of course, I ran across a couple of 3.5-inch floppy disks the other day down the basement. I no longer have a computer that will run 3.5-inch floppy disks. Fortunately, it was some old stuff and I could just destroy it. But because software changes, hardware changes, choose your media and create a data archive, look for file formats that will survive for a long time, have the greatest likelihood of surviving her for a long time. But he makes an interesting point. This is yet another thing to consider if you choose to go this route, because as time goes by, you may need to transfer digital files from one format to another, one media to another. But anyway, this book's about 130 pages. I think it's an excellent book. Here is a website, a training course website, Udemy training course, Discover How to Live Forever, Tweet and Blog from the Beyond. I have completed this course as well. I recommend this course. It was done in about 2014, last updated in 2015. Despite the title, it doesn't spend lots of time about tweeting and blogging from the beyond through some sort of artificial intelligence avatar. It is more pretty much basic stuff, but it offers some different slants and different points of view from, let's say, the book from Joe Kissel that I just showed you. So I also recommend this. And here's the series of various little short videos in the program. In total, the whole thing is probably maybe 45 minutes or so. And it's a quick overview, but I think worth going through. Okay, I mentioned YouTube videos. Here is, if you plug in Digital Afterlife, here are just what pops up on digital videos, and you will find a bunch of them. you'll notice I put quote marks around digital afterlife, and I encourage you when you're searching on the web to do the same thing, and I'll show you why on the next slide. If you're searching for web articles about digital afterlife, you do put it in quotes and you get 86,300 results. Now, when's the last time you got 86,300 results on a Google search? This is a rather limited field. If you try digital afterlife without the quote marks, everything with the word digital in it will pop up and you'll be back to the millions. And if you and it will be augmented by all sorts of religious oriented posts that have to do with the afterlife. So I encourage you to remember the quote marks and limit to digital afterlife subjects. But here are just a smattering of what comes up. The Digital Afterlife is a Mess is an interesting article from Slate magazine, and it talks about the sort of Wild West nature of digital afterlife right now, in that laws are changing. Some states have laws, other states have no laws. The question of legality of your appointment of a digital executor and agent, and how enforceable your wishes are in today's world. The providers who are coming and going, who are offering afterlife avatars and other afterlife services, a number of them have sprung up and some have gone away, and the instability, if you will, or the questioning about the long-term viability of some of these. It's an interesting article. So anyway, I mentioned that, and here is, for example, I mentioned 89,000 on the first one. Here's how to archive your data forever. Just plug that in, you get 32 million results. So it gives you an idea of how limited, relatively speaking, digital afterlife subjects are at this very moment. Okay, here is a digital website, the Digital Beyond. It was developed by Evan Carroll, the same gentleman who was co-author of the first book that I showed you. This has been in place for a number of years, and with a number of posts on the site. And as you scroll through these posts, these are 2018, but you can find posts going back to probably sometime before 2010. I don't remember exactly how far back, but it will help give you an idea of the evolution. There's different categories in here you can check out, but I particularly want to call your attention to the online services list, which I will show you on the next slide. This is what happens when you click on that online services list. Here is a digital death and afterlife services list of various service providers offering different versions of support to you. They're arranged alphabetically, so that's why you're seeing these first two. There are in total 57 right now on the list, and interestingly, there are some that have faded by the wayside already. One of those is Everplans. What I like about Everplans is that they have a resources and guides section, which is free. So if you click on that, you come up with planning categories, resources, and if you go over here to digital estate and click on that, you get a number of digital resources free for you to use. Digital cheat sheet, how to create a digital estate plan, and how to close online accounts when someone dies. Whoa, that looks like a good one, and it is. If you click on that, you get step-by-step instructions on how to close more than 230 services, alphabetically listed. Gives you a good idea. Obviously, you have to go to the website and confirm that what's shown on here is in fact current, but it gives you a good idea of what to expect. And there's other material on that site as well that would help you with your digital afterlife planning, and they offer services for a fee to help you with your entire estate planning, saving documents for you, and doing a number of services for you, as do many of those other sites on the website that I showed you from Evan Williams. So we've covered a lot to think about, explore, and do. Our digital environment is constantly changing. So whatever you do, you'll need to set up dates on your calendar or some process to go back and re-examine what you've set up to see if it is in fact still current, still viable, or whether or not you need to update it in some way. I believe that we will all benefit by considering our tangible and digital assets together. Certainly, we should consider our customers. If you think about it, did anybody really want grandma's fine china when she died? But she saved it for her favorite granddaughter. Her favorite granddaughter had no desire whatsoever for grandma's china. So consider your customers as you think, I'm going to save all this stuff for my kids or for whomever. Don't overlook incapacity, a whole different world. I suggest that you even consider a matrix that says, okay, one side is incapacity, one side is death, and what's different for each of these things as you're going through each of your accounts and your digital possessions. What is different? And make sure that everybody knows about your plans and understands your digital afterlife plans. So we're almost finished, but I do have one other thought that I want to mention. I mentioned to you two thoughts, actually. One is, while you're thinking about your digital plan, do you have a spouse? Does he or she have their own digital collection of stuff? So don't forget about your spouses or your parents or whoever else you might have some responsibility for. They need to be part of this digital afterlife planning as well. Secondly, this whole idea, if you don't want it to live forever, don't post it. Be careful about what you post, because once it's out there, you tend to lose control over it. I ran across an article about a woman who advocated, written by a writer who had had an experience when her brother died, that prompted her to go back and delete a lot of tweets that she had done in the past, and encouraged him to do as well, and well, actually did for him as well, because he had passed away and she had authority to act on his behalf. But go back and delete tweets, delete as much information as you would like. And one final thought, there's an article on that Everplans website about skeletons in your closet. And if you have anything on your home or on your computer that you wouldn't want to have someone in your family or friends or online or whatever become aware of, you may want to consider going through your whole house and your whole computer network and so on, and purge those items now rather than leave them forgotten about to be discovered after you die. So look for and eliminate any skeletons in your closet. So those are some tips, and I think you'll find those references quite helpful as you go along.
Okay. Thank you, Phil. Hopefully I've solved the feedback problem, because I don't hear any feedback at the moment.
Right.
Okay, that's good. Just had to plug in the right microphone in the right spot. Okay, to be quite honest with you, there was only one question, but I'm sure that more questions are going to pop up after I answer this. The question is, how do you protest a will from or protect, I think is the word he wants, a will from being changed by other family members?
Well, if it's a legal will that has been drawn up by an attorney and witnessed and so forth, it cannot legally be changed by someone else. If it's a digital will that you have shared with family members and given to as just a document, a Word document or whatever, and given to family members and a person you designate as your digital executor, everybody's going to have a copy of that same document. If one of your family members decides to change it, that's going to be probably rather obvious to other family members and the digital executor. But that begs this question of talking with your attorney about what can be done to create a legal document. And the literature suggests that you do not put all the details of your digital will in your real will, because that's probated and published. I mean, it's available. People can see it. But you could perhaps talk with him about legitimizing a digital executor in your will to legitimize his authority to be the final arbiter of what happens to your digital life. And when you go through the various websites where you can designate a person to act on your behalf, then you can designate that person to do that. Furthermore, you can limit distribution of your passwords and other access information so that some rogue family member will not be able to access your accounts. So those are some thoughts.
Okay,